In the stillness of an endless cosmic night, where stars whispered secrets to the void, there came a call of twilight that resonated in the hearts of those who dared to walk a path uncharted. In the vast tapestry of the galaxy, the ancient force murmured in a voice both tender and profound, a whisper that transcended the rigid boundaries of light and dark. This was the beckoning of the grey, an invitation to explore a realm where emotions intermingled, where the luminous and the shadow danced in a delicate eternal embrace. Under the shimmering glow of distant nebulae, a lone figure wandered amid the echoes of forgotten lore. This seeker, neither wholly Jedi nor entirely Sith, carried within a soul that was both tempest and tranquility. In the quiet recesses of meditation, the figure sensed the immutable presence of the Force, a presence that was not confined to the dogmatic teachings of ancient orders, but rather an all-encompassing essence that defied simple categorization. It was here in the twilight of understanding that the journey of the Grey Jedi began. The call was subtle at first, like the faint rustle of leaves in an otherworldly breeze. It spoke of a balance, an elusive harmony between the extremes that had defined the galactic order for millennia. The figure paused upon a ridge overlooking a valley of shimmering stardust, where the horizon blurred into shades of silver and violet. Each moment felt timeless, as if the soul of the galaxy had paused to breathe, a collective exhale that filled the void with a tender, melancholic hope. Ancient ruins of a long-forgotten temple lay scattered beneath the starlight, relics of a civilization that once revered the Force in its most raw and unadulterated form. Here, in the silent embrace of crumbling stone and cosmic dust, lay the records of a time when balance was celebrated rather than condemned. The air vibrated with the memories of countless beings who had, in their quest for truth, dared to step beyond the confines of light and dark. Their voices, though faint, still echoed in the hallowed corridors of time, urging the seeker to listen closely. In a clearing bordered by ancient trees that reached for the heavens, the figure found solace in the gentle hum of the Force. It was in that sacred moment that the call of twilight grew into a resonant symphony, a celestial invitation to experience the Force in its entirety. The grey path was not a repudiation of light or dark, but rather an affirmation of life's intricate duality. The seeker felt both the warmth of compassion and the cool caress of solitude, understanding that true wisdom lay in embracing every facet of existence. As the night deepened, the figure sat in silent communion with the Force, feeling its currents ripple through every fiber of being. The luminescence of distant galaxies merged with the soft shadows of the surrounding void, crafting a tapestry of light and darkness that mirrored the inner landscape of the traveler. Every breath was a meditation, every heartbeat a reminder of the delicate interplay between hope and despair, between creation and decay. In this exquisite dance, the boundaries blurred, and the seeker began to fathom the unspoken truth that the Force was as much a journey inward as it was an odyssey across the cosmos. The ancient teachings of the Jedi and the fervent dogmas of the Sith had long dictated the paths of many, yet here in this quiet moment, the traveler sensed a more nuanced melody. It was a tune composed not solely of virtuous light or malevolent darkness, but of both, woven together in a symphony of existence that defied convention. The call of twilight was both a lament and a promise. It mourned the loss of balance in the cosmos, while also heralding the rebirth of an ancient, harmonious way of being. In the soft illumination of the midnight sky, the seeker recalled the stories of old, a time when sages, unbound by the strictures of orthodoxy, roamed the galaxy in search of truths hidden between the polar extremes. Their footsteps were etched in the annals of history, not as outcasts but as pioneers of a more profound understanding of the Force. Their legacy, though obscured by the passage of time, glowed like embers in the vast darkness, a beacon for those who yearn to find their own path among the stars. Thus, beneath the endless celestial canvas, the solitary wanderer embraced the call of twilight. With every measured breath and quiet step, the figure moved deeper into the realm of grey, a world where the rigid lines of the past softened into a luminous mist. In this sacred space, where legends were born and destinies intertwined, the journey toward a new understanding of the Force had quietly begun. At dawn's fragile light, the traveler rose with quiet resolve, vowing to honor Twilight's call and delve into the Force's deepest mysteries. In that solemn moment, the cosmos whispered of endless possibility and a balance yet to be revealed. A new era beckoned silently. As the first light of a tentative dawn began to brush the edges of the twilight, the lone traveler's heart still carried the echo of that profound call, a call that had stirred something deep within the soul. In the quiet aftermath of the cosmic embrace, a new chapter unfolded, a time when cherished beliefs began to crack beneath the weight of revelation, and the very foundations of ancient doctrines trembled like fragile glass. In the serene silence of the early morning, the wanderer moved deliberately through a world that was as familiar as it was transformed. The gentle murmur of the Force, which had so recently sung a hymn of twilight, now carried a different timbre, a voice that questioned, that challenged the rigid tenets of long-held dogmas. The doctrines that once provided structure and clarity now appeared as brittle constructs, shattered by the relentless pursuit of a deeper, more encompassing truth. It was as if the cosmos itself had decided to reveal that the extremes of light and dark were mere illusions, built on the fleeting sands of certainty. Walking along a path lined with ancient monoliths and relics of civilizations past, the seeker recalled the hallowed halls of the Jedi temple and the fearsome citadels of the Sith. Both had long preached absolutes, one in devotion to the luminous virtues of hope and selflessness, the other in the tempest of ambition and raw power. Yet now, in the fragile light of this new dawn, these constructs seemed less like immutable laws and more like stories, fables that had once comforted the weary and provided guidance in times of turmoil. The traveler's spirit, attuned to the subtle symphony of the Force, recognized the hollowness in these extremes. The very fabric of belief was being pulled apart, thread by thread, exposing a raw vulnerability at its core. Every step taken was a quiet act of defiance, a movement away from the well-trodden paths of rigid discipline and into a realm where doubt was not a weakness, but a doorway to greater understanding. The shattered doctrines echoed in the mind like a soft refrain, urging the traveler to look beyond the binary confines of tradition. There was an undeniable beauty in this dissonance. In the spaces between certainty and uncertainty lay the potential for true wisdom. It was here, amid the ruins of fractured certainties, that the traveler began to see the value of questioning, of letting go of inherited dogma in favor of an uncharted, balanced path. In a secluded clearing bathed in the gentle luminescence of awakening starlight, remnants of old teachings lay scattered like forgotten scrolls and weathered inscriptions. These relics whispered of a time when the Force was embraced in its totality, a time before the rigid dichotomy had split it into opposing factions. The traveler knelt beside a crumbling stone tablet, tracing the delicate carvings with trembling fingers. Each inscription was a fragment of a larger narrative, a piece of an ancient puzzle that spoke of unity rather than division. It was a narrative lost to time, buried beneath layers of ideology and selective memory. The serenity of the morning belied the inner tumult that now stirred within the seeker's heart. A quiet sadness mingled with a hopeful curiosity, for the realization that long-held truths were but half the story was both a burden and a liberation. The doctrines that once offered comfort now seemed like chains that restricted the full spectrum of the Force. In their place, a profound emptiness beckoned, a call to rebuild one's understanding from the very ground up, to explore the vast continuum that lay between light and dark. As the day unfurled its gentle hues across the sky, the traveler found solace in solitary contemplation. The mind wandered through memories of past teachings, questioning each lesson with a newfound skepticism. The rigid discipline of the Jedi, with its clear mandates and structured serenity, was now seen as only one facet of the Force's multifaceted nature. Similarly, the fiery passion of the Sith, with its relentless pursuit of power, revealed itself to be a distortion, a shadow that had grown too long, obscuring the delicate balance that was meant to be honored. In this reflective solitude, the traveler began to sense that true understanding lay not in choosing one side over the other, but in embracing the contradictions that formed the essence of existence. Each moment of introspection deepened the awareness that the universe was not a realm of absolutes, but a living tapestry of interwoven light and dark. The shattered doctrines, rather than being a source of despair, became the catalyst for rebirth. They urged the seeker to forge a new way of feeling the Force, one that was guided by intuition, tempered by the wisdom of both extremes, and enriched by the quiet spaces in between. The old orders, with all their certainties, had provided structure in times of chaos. Yet now it was time for a different kind of order, one that was as fluid and unpredictable as the cosmos itself. With each step, the traveler embraced the uncertainty of this uncharted path, aware that the journey ahead would be fraught with both peril and revelation. The gentle murmur of the Force now spoke in a language of paradox, of unity emerging from division. In the silent interplay of light and shadow, the traveler felt an undeniable stirring, a promise that in the remnants of shattered doctrines lay the seeds of a greater, more harmonious truth. And so, with a heart both heavy and hopeful, the seeker pressed onward into the vast unknown, ready to dismantle the barriers of the past and to weave a new narrative in the luminous tapestry of the Force. The dawn's gentle glow gave way to a new day as the traveler pressed on, burdened yet emboldened by the revelations of shattered doctrines. In the soft light of early morning, where the whispers of ancient lore still resonated, a stirring began within the seeker, a stirring born of the very shadows that had long been shunned by the rigid orders of Jedi and Sith alike. This was the moment when the traveler, with a heart both tender and tumultuous, resolved to confront the darkness within, recognizing that true understanding required embracing every fragment of the Force. In the quiet solitude of a secluded glen, the figure found refuge beneath twisted, ancient trees whose gnarled branches seemed to cradle secrets of a forgotten past. Here, far from the watchful eyes of orthodox mentors, the traveler allowed emotions long buried to surface. The lessons of the past, though harsh and unyielding, had left scars that whispered of deep truths. Each scar was a silent testimony to battles fought against the strict dichotomies of light and dark, a testament to the internal conflicts that had defined the journey thus far. Now, in this secluded haven, the seeker resolved to face those inner shadows with an openness that bordered on vulnerability. As the wind rustled through the leaves in a melancholic cadence, the traveler recalled the rigid teachings of the ancient orders. Their doctrines, while offering clarity, had also demanded a sacrifice, a surrender of the intricate layers that made up the soul. The pain of denying one's darker impulses was a burden carried in secret, a sorrowful echo of a self forced into a single shade. In the interplay of dappled light and deep shadow beneath the forest canopy, the traveler sensed the wisdom in that darkness. It was not an enemy to be vanquished, but rather a vital part of the self, a wellspring of power, passion, and sometimes the raw impetus for transformation. Seated upon a mossy stone, the traveler closed their eyes and allowed the Force to guide introspection. In that silent communion, the familiar cadence of breathing merged with the pulsating rhythm of the universe. The mingling of light and dark became tangible. Every inhalation carried the cool mist of shadow, and every exhalation released the warmth of luminous hope. Within this intimate dialogue, the seeker recognized that the emotions long repressed, anger, sorrow, desire, were not aberrations to be feared, but essential notes in the symphony of existence. They were, in truth, the darker hues necessary to complete the masterpiece of being. The realization brought with it a profound sense of liberation, tempered by the gravity of acceptance. To embrace the shadow within was to acknowledge the full spectrum of one's nature, to honor the intricate tapestry of experiences that had shaped the soul. The traveler's heart, once constrained by the fear of darkness, now pulsed with the steady rhythm of self-acceptance. Each beat was a declaration of the belief that the shadows were not a sign of moral failing, but a natural counterpoint to the brightness that had so often been celebrated. This integration of opposites, delicate yet essential, was the essence of the grey Jedi way. In the hushed solitude of that forest glen, the traveler began to explore the recesses of the mind with a newfound clarity. Memories of past failures and moments of quiet despair mingled with recollections of joy and triumph. There, in the interplay of recollections, the traveler discovered that the shadow within was not a curse, but a mirror reflecting the depths of one's humanity. The acceptance of this truth was transformative, a metamorphosis of spirit that required both courage and humility. It was as if the very fabric of the soul, previously torn by conflict, was being slowly mended by the gentle hands of self-compassion. The landscape around the seeker seemed to echo this internal transformation. A nearby brook, its waters clear and steady, murmured over smooth stones as if singing a lullaby of renewal. The play of light on the water's surface, dappled and ever-changing, became a metaphor for the fluid nature of the force. The traveler recognized that just as the brook did not reject the cool shade of the forest or the bright glints of the sun, so too must one accept all facets of the inner self. Every ripple in the water was a reminder that life, in its ever-unfolding journey, was meant to be experienced in its entirety, a mosaic of light and dark, joy and sorrow, hope and despair. In that sacred moment of self-discovery, the traveler resolved to no longer shy away from the darker emotions that had once been a source of internal strife. Instead, they would be woven into the tapestry of personal growth, acknowledged and understood as part of a larger, cosmic balance. The journey was not about conquering the shadow, but about learning to dance with it. A slow, immersive waltz where every step was a harmonious blend of passion and restraint. The traveler's resolve was both gentle and firm, a quiet declaration that embracing the shadow was an act of profound self-love and courage. As the day advanced and the light shifted, the seeker rose from the mossy stone with a sense of renewal. The inner darkness, once a silent enemy, now shimmered like a constellation of hidden truths waiting to be explored. With each step along the winding forest path, the traveler carried within the quiet strength of both light and shadow, a unity that promised deeper insight and a truer understanding of the Force. The integration of these dualities was not a destination, but a continuous journey, a pilgrimage of the soul toward a balanced, enlightened existence. With a heart emboldened by the acceptance of its own darkened corners, the traveler moved onward into the unfolding day, prepared to meet whatever challenges might arise with a spirit tempered by both fire and ice. The soft glow of the previous day's revelations awakened a deeper yearning in the traveler, a longing to uncover ancient truths buried beneath time and silence. Having embraced their inner shadows, the seeker was now drawn to the relics and forgotten texts of a lost era, hoping they might illuminate the path forward. In a forest of silver-leaved trees where dusk lingered like a quiet hymn, the traveler stumbled upon a secluded glade. Scattered across the soft earth lay remnants of a forgotten civilization. Statues worn smooth by time, and an obelisk etched with symbols unlike those of Jedi or Sith. These were not relics of dominance or restraint, but echoes of balance, of passion tempered by wisdom, and light dancing with shadow. The obelisk bore witness to an age when the Force was revered not as a weapon or a burden, but as a living river that nourished all. Each glyph whispered stories of harmony achieved through understanding rather than rigid codes. As the traveler traced the ancient markings with calloused fingertips, a bittersweet wonder stirred within. The stone pulsed faintly, as if echoing the heartbeat of the cosmos. Memories of past struggles mingled with the glade's quiet wisdom. The traveler recalled their acceptance of inner darkness, now seen as only one facet of a larger truth. These teachings pointed to a forgotten unity, where the Force was embraced in its entirety, not fractured by duality. Inspired, the seeker ventured deeper into the forest, drawn toward the ruins of a temple hidden beneath vines and time. Within its moss-draped walls, an archive awaited, delicate manuscripts and scrolls resting in shafts of colored light that filtered through broken stained glass. The traveler gently unrolled a fragile scroll, revealing verses from another age. They spoke of wise beings who gathered under stars to ponder the mysteries of existence. The Force, they believed, was not a divider, but a breath shared by all life, a luminous current that pulsed through everything. These verses echoed the traveler's inner revelations. They offered not commandments but insights, reminders that balance is not a destination, but a way of being. It is found not by choosing one side, but by walking the path between. The traveler lingered in the temple's embrace, letting the ancient words soak into the soul like rain on dry ground. As twilight deepened, the glade became a sacred mirror, light and shadow weaving together in harmony. The teachings whispered that wisdom often hides not in absolutes but in the quiet space between extremes. Each relic was a fragment of a larger mosaic, guiding those who dared to question, to seek, and to synthesize. In the stillness, the Force spoke, softly, clearly. It spoke of unity and divergence, creation and decay. It reminded the traveler that the path was not linear but a spiral, each revelation a return to deeper truths. The forgotten teachings, once dismissed by dogma, now offered a beacon for a new philosophy, one that embraced the whole of the Force. With reverence and resolve, the traveler stepped from the glade, determined to carry this wisdom forward. The journey ahead would hold both hardship and illumination, but with every step, the seeker would walk in tune with the eternal murmur of the Force. Beneath the stars and the rustling canopy, the echoes of forgotten teachings whispered a promise that balance could be reclaimed and the legacy of a united Force might yet rise again. In the quiet afterglow of ancient revelations, the traveler felt drawn toward a new mystery, one not marked by doctrine but by the subtle threshold of neutrality. Echoes of past teachings still pulsed with each heartbeat, urging a re-examination of belief. Beneath a sky of dusk and dawn, the traveler stepped into a space beyond rigid ideologies, where balance replaced extremity. Leaving behind the sacred glade, the seeker entered a landscape of transitions, gentle hills, murmuring winds, and a horizon painted with both light and shadow. It was here that the traveler began to understand the essence of neutrality, not indecision, but a harmonious embrace of all facets of the Force, unbound by dogma. As they followed a meandering path beside quiet streams, the weight of inherited legacies began to fade. The once absolute lines of Jedi restraint and Sith passion now seemed remnants of a divided past. In nature's quiet rhythm, the Force revealed itself as something freer, flowing, balanced, and alive. Neutrality invited the seeker to live in the space between passion and peace, ambition and surrender. At the edge of a still pool, the traveler paused. The mirrored surface reflected not just their form, but the infinite ways one could exist. The water shimmered with both light and shadow, neither one, yet both. In that image, the traveler saw neutrality not as emptiness, but as presence, the wisdom to honor both extremes without being consumed by either. Memories stirred, shattered doctrines, whispered truths, and the long struggle for inner unity. Each experience, painful or hopeful, was a thread in the greater tapestry of the Force. To embrace neutrality was to be fully present, to carry light and dark in one balanced heart. As the path wound through ancient stone markers and overgrown ruins, the traveler passed remnants of belief systems long forgotten. Weathered monuments bore faint inscriptions, once firm declarations now softened by time. In their silence, the veil of neutrality became palpable, a gentle call to move beyond binary thinking and into a more fluid, inclusive way of being. Each step forward became an act of quiet rebellion. The traveler walked not with urgency but with mindful calm, allowing the Force to guide the way. The journey was not a leap, but a steady unveiling, each moment revealing a sliver of deeper truth. Neutrality, they realized, was not a destination, but a state of awareness that required openness and inner peace. In a secluded clearing where even the galaxy's hum seemed to hush, the traveler rested. The wind, distant life, and the silent pulse of the Force joined in a serene harmony. Here the traveler embraced neutrality fully, understanding that true clarity came not from choosing sides, but from transcending them. The experience was both grounding and expansive. The traveler stood at a meeting point of opposing currents, light and dark, calm and storm, all merging into a vibrant whole. Neutrality was not a void. It was rich with the fullness of experience and possibility. By surrendering to this flow, the traveler allowed the Force to move freely through them. With the veil lifted, light and shadow no longer appeared as enemies, but as parts of a vast, unified spectrum. The traveler sensed a profound shift, a new understanding rooted not in conflict, but in integration. Their path, once shaped by others' truths, was now becoming their own. As the day moved with quiet grace, the traveler continued on, carrying the soft, steady strength of neutrality like a lantern, a guide for others who sought not to conquer the Force, but to live in balance with its infinite depth. In the wake of newfound neutrality, the traveler's path led into lands where the essence of balance was rigorously tested by the shifting winds of destiny. The journey, once marked by quiet revelations, now confronted the seeker with external challenges that stirred the soul and demanded an unwavering spirit. Here, amidst untamed landscapes and troubled hearts, the delicate interplay of light and dark was forced to reveal its true nature. At daybreak, the traveler set foot on a rugged trail lined with weathered stone arches and murmuring streams. Each step echoed across the ancient earth, a reminder that the quest was as much a venture into the world's complex heart as an inward journey. The traveler's gaze, calm yet resolute, met the unfolding challenges with quiet determination, for the lessons of neutrality had instilled a strength born of embracing both joy and sorrow. The first trial appeared in the form of a small village ensnared by old grudges. Here the inhabitants were divided by a bitter feud, a wound inflicted by past betrayals. The traveler, sensitive to the murmurs of the Force, was drawn to mediate between the opposing sides. In the village square, where tension thickened the air, the seeker spoke softly of understanding and forgiveness. The voice, tender as a lullaby, urged both parties to see beyond immediate grievances and to acknowledge the shared pain that underlay their conflict. In that moment of quiet dialogue, the spark of reconciliation flickered, promising that even deep wounds might begin to heal when met with compassion. Yet the path of balance would not be so easily traversed. In a nearby town, another challenge arose, a moral dilemma that questioned the nature of intervention. A revered elder, once a pillar of wisdom, had faltered, succumbing to temptation and error. The community was torn between honoring his legacy and condemning his fall from grace. Standing amidst a throng of sorrowful voices, the traveler pondered the nature of redemption. With a measured tone that blended regret and hope, the seeker suggested that those who stray might still return to the light through sincere atonement. Although the words could not erase the sting of betrayal, they offered a new path forward, one that embraced accountability without forsaking mercy. As afternoon shadows lengthened, the traveler's journey led to a critical crossroads where two factions, each steadfast in their dogmatic beliefs, clashed fiercely. In this arena, the purity of absolute conviction had sown discord, and the air was heavy with animosity. Here, the traveler recalled the wisdom of neutrality, an understanding that true balance lies in the convergence of varied perspectives. Speaking gently amid the clamor, the seeker implored both sides to temper their fervor with empathy. The soft cadence of those words, like rain upon parched soil, began to soften the rigid postures, allowing space for reflection and unity. Throughout these trials, every external challenge became a mirror reflecting the inner struggles the traveler had long come to know. The path of neutrality was not a refuge from hardship, but rather a sturdy vessel designed to weather life's storms. With each encounter, the traveler felt the force guiding them through turbulent dilemmas and moral complexities, a steady current amid swirling uncertainties. Nightfall brought a hush over the land as the traveler found shelter beneath a sky strewn with shimmering stars. In a quiet clearing, away from the clamor of discord, the seeker allowed the day's events to settle into reflective silence. Here, amid the soft rustling of leaves and the distant song of the wind, the traveler reviewed the trials endured. A village touched by reconciliation, a community offered a chance at redemption, and a battlefield of ideologies softened by the promise of empathy. Each trial, though fraught with pain and doubt, served as a lesson in the art of balance. In that serene darkness, the traveler realized that the true challenge of balance lay not only in quelling external strife, but in harmonizing the internal dialogue between conflicting emotions. Every test was a forge for the spirit, a crucible in which the essence of neutrality was refined. The hardships endured were as vital as the soft moments of understanding, each one contributing to a richer, more nuanced connection with the Force. Rising with a renewed sense of purpose, the traveler embraced the night as a companion, carrying the lessons of the day into the uncertainties of tomorrow. The trials of balance had exposed vulnerabilities and strengths alike, affirming that the journey was not about avoiding extremes but learning to thrive within their interplay. With a heart emboldened by compassion and tempered by resolve, the seeker advanced, guided by the gentle yet unwavering current of the Force. Under the eternal canopy of stars, the traveler moved forward into the unknown, a living testament to the enduring power of balance, a quiet defiance against the pull of extremes, and an invitation for others to listen to the soft harmonies of a universe in constant, delicate equilibrium. The air was charged, not with silence but with meaning. An invisible thread hummed between stars and soil, between thought and instinct. After a long road of trials testing heart and conviction, the traveler began to sense something stirring beneath it all. The journey toward balance had evolved from a mere response to the galaxy's extremes into a deliberate act of discovery. A pattern was emerging, not carved in stone but whispered in the currents of the Force. A quiet code not taught in temple halls or Sith tombs, but lived, felt, and known only through personal experience. It was born in nuance, not in absolutes. Every trial, every moment that demanded empathy instead of fury, discipline over indulgence, left behind echoes. Slowly, these echoes coalesced into a subtle rhythm, a truth not imposed, but uncovered. It was as if the traveler's actions were writing a code through their very being. At the break of dawn, in a forgotten cave high on the cliffs of a storm-battered world, the traveler sat in meditation. Flickering reflections danced on the walls, cast by the tiny flame of a stone lantern. In that fragile interplay of shadow and light, the unspoken tenets began to form. A soft whisper emerged from the darkness. I follow neither fear nor rigid serenity. I walk where feeling flows, tempered, not tethered. The cave offered only the murmur of wind through its hollow depths. Soon another message was woven into the air, not spoken but felt. Emotion is not the enemy. When embraced with clarity, it becomes understanding. In that moment, the harshness of light and dark melted away into a fluid continuum. The light no longer hurt, and the darkness no longer beckoned with dread. Both simply existed like water and fire, capable of nurturing or destruction depending on how they were received. There had been a time when Jedi texts preached detachment and Sith rituals promised power through domination, yet neither path ever felt whole. What was now gathered were not commandments, but reflections, anchors for the self. The traveler realized that true wisdom lay in the balance between feeling and restraint. Later, under a bruised sky of violet clouds and falling dusk, the traveler etched fragments of this inner code onto the bark of a long-dead tree. It was not for posterity, but to see the intangible take form, even if only for a brief moment. I will not be ruled by shadow nor blinded by radiance. I will listen, and in listening, choose. These words echoed the path rarely spoken, a journey that embraced pain and love, fear and peace without succumbing to either. In time, others who had strayed from strict doctrines gathered. Some had left Jedi temples with unanswered questions. Others had escaped the suffocating grip of Sith promises. On remote moons or among forgotten temples they convened, not in judgment but in quiet circles of story. One such gathering took place on a cold plateau beneath a cracked moon, where ancient runes glowed faintly. Here, in shared stillness, voices spoke not of dogma but of feeling. I was told to silence my anger, one admitted, but my anger showed me the suffering that must be changed. Another replied, it moved me, yet I refused to let it control my path. From these shared truths emerged a mosaic, a hidden code of understanding not carved in stone but pulsing in the hearts of those who embraced the middle way. Some came to call it the Grey Whisper, a philosophy without hierarchy born from clarity and emotion, instinct and restraint. In the days that followed, the traveler wandered deeper into the galaxy's forgotten regions, carrying not rules but reminders, a memory of the Force as a living river, vast and unshaped by labels. This code was unwritten for others, yet lived in every choice, every hesitation, every act of courage and restraint. Even when unseen or amid the clamor of demands to pick a side, the code endured like a quiet heartbeat. In that heartbeat the Force stirred, not with approval or disapproval but with ancient recognition. It watched, waiting for those who sought not power but balance. In the wake of the hidden code that had reshaped the inner world, a new urgency stirred. A summons from a galaxy still scarred by old wounds and fierce divisions. The lessons of balance, learned in solitude, now faced their ultimate trial as the Seeker stepped into a realm where extremes clashed with relentless fervor. A distress signal pierced the calm of twilight during a long, winding journey toward a fractured world. This was a place where the stalwart ideals of the Jedi collided with the impassioned zeal of dark adherents over an ancient volatile resource, a cache of Force-reactive minerals whose unpredictable energy promised either salvation or ruin. Having long embraced the quiet power of neutrality, the Seeker sensed that this conflict would test the true mettle of balance. Upon reaching the outskirts of an embattled outpost, chaos reigned. Once a beacon of community, the settlement now lay in ruins. Buildings crumbled under the weight of war, and a shroud of smoke obscured the horizon. Civilians huddled among debris, their eyes a mix of terror and desperate hope. On one side, Jedi forces advanced with measured determination. On the other, a militant faction of dark adherents driven by raw passion and ambition clashed in a bid to harness the dangerous energy. Without aligning with either faction, the Seeker moved through the discord like a silent mediator, intent not on choosing sides but on uncovering the root of the conflict. It soon became clear that the unstable mineral cache was the true source of strife, a power so potent it drew both the steady hand of the Jedi and the incendiary will of the dark followers, turning a dispute into an all-consuming war. Amid the tumult, the Seeker paused in a ruined courtyard where frightened civilians had taken shelter. Kneeling beside a small group, a gentle voice carried hope. There is another way, a path that does not demand endless sacrifice. In every heart, the seed of balance can bloom if nurtured. These words, filled with quiet resolve and compassion, offered fragile hope to those who had lost everything. Shortly after, the Seeker encountered the opposing leaders. A Jedi commander, eyes heavy with duty, demanded, "We protect life and uphold order. Why do you refuse to join us?" Calmly, the Seeker replied, "I choose not to pick a side when true answers lie in the space between extremes. I see the suffering that rigid beliefs inflict, and I seek to restore harmony." For a moment, the commander's stern face softened at the painful truth behind decades of conflict. Not long after, the Seeker faced the fierce leader of the Dark Adherents, a woman whose passion blazed like a rebellion. "The Force is meant to be seized by the strong," she thundered. Meeting her intensity with calm conviction, the Seeker countered, "Real power is born not of brute force, but of understanding and restraint. When extremes clash, all are consumed." For an instant, the battlefield fell silent as if the very air held its breath in a contest of wills. As the day deepened, the Seeker advanced toward the epicenter of conflict, the pulsating cache of unstable minerals. Beneath a storm-darkened sky and amid distant roars of artillery, a steady hand reached out to the cold, throbbing substance. In that electrifying moment, the Seeker absorbed the tumult, the fear of the Jedi, the burning anger of the Dark Adherents, and the anguished cries of the innocent caught between. Embracing this torrent, the Seeker allowed the energy to flow through, a controlled release that transformed chaos into calm. Gradually, the volatile minerals lost their malevolence. One by one, the instruments of war dissolved into the ether of the Force, neutralized not by destruction but by the redirection of turbulent energy into serene balance. In that moment, both factions paused in astonishment, compelled to reconsider the nature of power. With the immediate threat diminished, the Jedi withdrew cautiously while the Dark Adherents retreated to reassess their ambitions. The Seeker, unburdened by accolades, quietly left behind a lingering question. Might the seed of unity take root even in a galaxy torn by extremes? Every step forward became a testament to the belief that true balance is not static, but an evolving journey, a constant interplay of light and shadow that shapes the destiny of the cosmos. From the fading echoes of the outpost and the lessons of confrontation, a quiet inward journey began, a path of solitude, reflection, and gentle renewal. The fiery clashes and measured cadence of mediation had given way to a deep longing for introspection. Here, away from the tumult of opposing forces, the Seeker embarked on a pilgrimage of the spirit, a quest to reconcile every facet of being beneath an untroubled, expansive sky. The landscape unfolded as a realm of serene wilderness. Ancient rock formations carved over millennia stood as silent witnesses to the passage of time. Their rugged faces, softened by the glow of twilight, mirrored both inner scars and quiet triumphs. Winding trails led through groves of whispering trees, each leaf murmuring secrets of creation and decay, of light nurtured by the gentle touch of shadow. In these natural cathedrals, every crag and crevice seemed to hold a story, a fragment of a universal narrative woven from loss and hope. Step by measured step, the Seeker advanced along a moss-lined trail, where the soft crunch of footsteps became a metronome, echoing the steady beat of the Force. The cool, damp air carried the faint scent of rain and wild herbs, stirring memories of forgotten legends and inspiring new reflections. In this secluded haven, every element of nature, the rustle of leaves, the murmur of a distant brook, the quiet hum of night insects, spoke of a balance that was both fragile and eternal. Here the forces of creation and dissolution coexisted, inviting a similar harmony within. At a small, bubbling spring emerging from ancient stones, a pause offered communion with nature. The clear water, reflecting the soft shimmer of an emerging moon, imparted a quiet lesson. Just as water finds its way through unyielding barriers, So too must one navigate life's obstacles with patience and grace. This simple act reaffirmed that true strength lies in accepting both change and stillness. As evening deepened, the wanderer reached a gently sloping clearing bathed in the subdued light of countless stars. The expansive sky above stretched in delicate shades of indigo and silver, each star a distant promise in the vast cosmic tapestry. Settling on a weathered stone, the seeker drew a deep, steady breath, allowing the quiet majesty of the universe to infuse every fiber of their being. In that enveloping silence, thoughts turned toward the hidden code forged in earlier trials, a code that had guided them through fiery clashes and into calm neutrality. That code, once a set of unspoken principles born of necessity, now emerged as a gentle reminder of the beauty in balance. Recollections of tender moments exchanged during conflict and the steady rhythm of the Force became stepping stones along this solitary path. A quiet affirmation that every act of compassion, every moment of restraint, was a vital note in the grand symphony of life. Here, in the stillness between heartbeats, the realization grew. The solitary path was not a journey of isolation, but one of profound integration. In the silence, the full spectrum of existence was embraced, from the blinding brilliance of light to the comforting depths of shadow. The inherent duality of the Force, reflected in the inner landscape where joy and sorrow danced an eternal ballet, affirmed that this inward journey was as crucial as any external quest. Gazing upward at the infinite expanse of night, the seeker felt an intimate connection with every star and every whispered secret of the cosmos. The quiet path was a testament to the resilience of the spirit, a reminder that even in the absence of external strife, the inner battle for balance is constant and necessary. With a heart both tender and resolute, the journey continued. Each step along the solitary path was imbued with the wisdom of past struggles and the promise of future peace. Isolation was no burden, but a sacred space where compassion and introspection merged into harmony. In this union lay the true essence of the Force, a quiet, enduring presence that nurtures the soul with its timeless cadence. As the night deepened and stars shimmered like distant beacons, the seeker rose once more, carrying the serene glow of inner balance forward into the unknown. Emerging from the quiet sanctum of solitude, the traveler now found themselves drawn to a new beckoning, a promise of discovery that lay beyond the familiar contours of self and shadow. The path that had once offered the gentle solace of reflection had revealed its hidden reservoir of wisdom, and now that wisdom called for an exploration into realms uncharted by both the old orders and the new. The horizon stretched far ahead, not as a final destination, but as an ever-receding invitation to push the boundaries of understanding. Leaving behind the intimate communion with nature and the silent witness of the stars, the traveler began their journey toward lands where the Force whispered of ancient legacies and future possibilities. The cool night air, heavy with the scent of dew and wild blossoms, carried with it a palpable sense of anticipation. Every step on the winding trail was imbued with the lessons of past trials, a harmony of light and shadow, struggle and serenity. In that sacred transition, the solitary path transformed into a bridge, guiding the traveler from inner contemplation to an outer odyssey. The landscape evolved as the journey progressed. Rolling plains and jagged mountain ridges emerged beneath a sky transitioning from midnight indigo to the soft blush of dawn. In these shifting vistas, the traveler perceived the undeniable presence of history interlaced with myth. Echoes of battles fought not merely with weapons but with ideals, of voices that had once spoken of a balance that transcended mere opposition. The traveler's mind recalled the hidden code, the tender wisdom inscribed in the hearts of those who had walked the grey path before, and felt compelled to carry that legacy forward into the unknown. In a vast valley carved by time, where ancient ruins whispered tales of forgotten empires and vanished dreams, the traveler paused at the edge of a precipice. Before them lay a panoramic vista of an endless sky and rolling hills, bathed in the soft glow of early morning. The horizon, once a distant line of separation, now pulsed with a magnetic allure. Here, the traveler understood that the journey toward balance was an ongoing dialogue with the cosmos, a conversation that spanned not only space and time, but the very essence of being. Seated upon a weathered stone, the traveler allowed the quiet majesty of the scene to seep into their spirit. In that reflective stillness, they recalled every lesson learned from confrontation, solitude, and mediation. Each experience was a note in a vast, cosmic symphony, a song that resonated with the eternal interplay of creation and dissolution. The realization came with both the weight of past struggles and the buoyant promise of future hope, that the quest for balance was not a retreat into isolation, but an ever-expanding journey that embraced the full spectrum of existence. With the first rays of dawn illuminating the valley, the traveler rose with a profound sense of purpose. They set forth along a path that wound between the remnants of ancient stone edifices and the vibrant, uncharted wilderness beyond. Every footstep was an act of defiance against the confines of old dichotomies, a silent affirmation that life in all its complexity demanded exploration beyond the familiar. The traveler's eyes, bright with the light of newfound resolve, scanned the horizon as if seeking the next whisper of destiny. In the distance, hints of a great city emerged, its spires and domed structures merging with the soft contours of nature. This was not the cold, regimented architecture of the old Jedi or the harsh, imposing fortresses of the Sith. Instead, it was a city that spoke of unity and diversity, a living tapestry woven from the threads of countless cultures, philosophies, and dreams. The traveler felt an undeniable pull toward this urban haven, convinced that here, amid the mingling of ancient wisdom and emerging ideas, lay the key to a deeper understanding of the Force. As the journey advanced, the traveler encountered fellow wayfarers, each drawn by their own search for truth beyond the constraints of black and white. In quiet gatherings by flickering campfires and in the gentle hum of twilight conversations, stories were exchanged. Tales of daring escapes from rigid dogma, of hearts healed by unexpected acts of kindness, and of communities rebuilt on the principles of shared humanity enriched the traveler's own understanding. In these moments of communion, the traveler discovered that the journey was not a solitary one at all, but a collective voyage toward a horizon where every being's experience contributed to a vast interconnected mosaic. Emboldened by these encounters, the traveler pressed onward, their spirit lifted by the realization that every ending bore the seed of a new beginning. The vast unknown that lay beyond the horizon was not a void of uncertainty, but a fertile field waiting to be sown with the seeds of balance and compassion. With each step, the traveler wove the lessons of the past into a living tapestry, embracing both the light of hope and the shadow of experience as indispensable guides. In the soft glow of the rising sun, as the land stretched wide and welcoming before them, the traveler took a moment to savor the beauty of the journey itself. The horizon, ever elusive, beckoned with silent promises of further discovery, a journey that was as much about transcending old boundaries as it was about reaffirming the delicate equilibrium within. In that tender embrace of the future, the traveler sensed that the quest for balance was an endless, evolving odyssey, a sacred dialogue between the self and the infinite, inviting all who listened to step beyond the familiar and into the realm of true possibility. And so, with a heart full of quiet determination and eyes set on the distant glow of tomorrow, the traveler advanced into the luminous expanse, beyond the horizon toward a destiny written in the timeless language of the Force. The galaxy had quieted, not in war or strife, but deep within the soul of one who had walked the Twilight. Once torn between absolutes, the grey Jedi had stood at the edge of revelation, and now the countless cold stars whispered of something older, deeper, something untouched by the quarrels of light and dark. The Force was not finished speaking. In the stillness of meditation beneath jagged cliffs on a forgotten moon, far from the rigid lines of Jedi and Sith, a presence began to stir. It came not with sound or clear form, but as an ancient breath moving through the marrow of existence like wind through the bones of a long-dead forest. It was not a command, warning or promise. It simply was, a weightless gravity pulling at the edges of consciousness, a memory that was not memory, echoing with the solemnity of something vast and observant. The grey Jedi extended their senses into the living web of all things. What they felt was neither the warm guidance of the light nor the fierce hunger of the dark. It was something in between, something watching, waiting, breathing with the patience of millennia. It was the whispering presence. At first, it might have been mistaken for a trick of the Force, echoes from ancient holocrons or tangled Sith incantations carried on the wind. Yet this presence was not born of doctrine or memory. It did not teach or judge. It simply existed like stone or storm, tied to places untouched by civilization, wastes where life thrived not by power, but by balance, storm plains, molten canyons, barren valleys where sound vanished into the earth. In these remote regions, the grey Jedi felt the presence grow stronger, a silence pulsing in rhythm with the Force itself. Then, as fragments of lore surfaced from lost scrolls and faded temple records, one name kept echoing like a heartbeat beneath shifting sands. The Bendu. Spoken by few and understood by even fewer, the name resounded like a riddle wrapped in wind. I am the one in the middle, the Bendu. Neither creature nor spirit, neither god nor sage, perhaps an entity, or maybe a metaphor made flesh. Stirred by this mystery, the seeker delved into scattered lore across systems and centuries. A pattern emerged. The Bendu appeared where balance was forgotten, where war had raged too long, where both Jedi and Sith had lost the true voice of the Force. Always it came not to fight or to rule, but to remind, to exist as witness. In meditation, visions began to surface, not sent by any known source, but as storms of thought and silence. The seeker witnessed echoes of unborn creatures, trees growing in spirals, lightning that cracked in the rhythm of breath, and amid it all, a shadowless form, massive with eyes like twin voids, standing as immovable as a mountain. The presence did not speak in words, its message was felt. To seek balance is noble, but do you know what balance truly is? No answer came. The silence was complete, yet heavy with meaning. And so the journey continued, deeper into the wilds of the galaxy, to worlds where compasses spun aimlessly and the Force flowed without pattern. In that eye of silence, the whisper transformed into presence, and presence into encounter. It appeared not with glory, but in stillness, a being both beast and storm, both calm and tempest, a creature embodying the very essence of the middle. Massive antlers curved like branching timelines, and its body shimmered with the illusion of clouds, stone, and living bark. When it breathed, the sky itself seemed to respond. The Bendu had awoken. It regarded the one who had dared to walk the grey path, not with wrath or warmth, but with recognition. The air hummed softly, as if saying, "You have heard me, but hearing is not knowing. Knowing is not being." In that moment, the grey Jedi bowed in reverence, not as an act of worship, but as acknowledgement of a mystery greater than any doctrine. The whispering presence had become real, and with it, the journey began anew. The whispering presence had drawn the grey wanderer across starless stretches of forgotten space, where time felt as thin as mist on ancient stones. Each breath carried echoes of something older, wiser, unbound by Jedi or Sith rules. Here the Force was raw, unshaped, and primal. The presence had no voice, yet it spoke. It had no form, yet it loomed, a storm cloud stirring not fear but awe. It was the Bendu. At first, the Bendu did not appear in flesh or vision. It was felt in subtle shifts of wind on a remote drifting moon, in the slower blinking of stars that seemed hesitant to watch, in a Force that felt still, not asleep, not dead, but waiting. The grey Jedi, weary and marked by hard-won balance, camped among obsidian ridges veined with kyber crystal. These stones pulsed not with bright color, but with a subtle, ancient thrum, attuned to a frequency older than the Republic itself. Here, meditation was not reaching out but settling in, like descending into an ocean of silence where thoughts merged indistinguishably with the Force. In that quiet solitude, the wanderer began to sense him, not purely light nor dark, but somewhere in between. There was a weight in the air when questions stirred in the mind, a presence behind closed eyes when memories surfaced. This presence was not yet a teacher, but a question, a mountain of potential, a silhouette on the edge of myth. Hushed passages in forgotten Jedi scrolls had spoken of the Bendu, the one in the middle, a being who claimed neither light nor shadow, but stood between them like a tree with roots in both. Ancient and indifferent to power or hierarchy, the Bendu existed simply as presence, as understanding. But legends fade or twist over time. On the fourth cycle beneath a darkened moon, the grey Jedi dared to speak aloud into the stillness. "Are you the Bendu?" There was no answer, only a hush so deep it made the stars seem shy. Then the ground rumbled, not with violence but with awakening. Like a planet stretching after millennia of slumber, cloud shadows rolled in from the distant horizon without wind. From them emerged a figure too vast to tread without stirring the soul, the Bendu, not quite beast, not quite spirit. Its eyes were like twin galaxies, spiraling with the weight of eons, and its antlers twisted like storm-touched branches. Its voice did not shatter the silence, but rolled through the bones like thunder from within. "I am the Bendu. I am the one in the middle." The grey Jedi bowed, not in worship, but in recognition. There was no master here, no tyrant cloaked in calm, no whispering serpent of ambition. The Bendu was balance itself, not by seeking it, but by simply being it, effortlessly and immovably. The air grew thick with unseen wisdom as the Force flowed in spirals, intertwining strands of brightness and shadow. Every choice made, every passion suppressed, every anger acknowledged, seemed laid bare before this being. "You seek what lies beyond balance," the Bendu intoned, neither accusing nor congratulating. "But do you understand what balance truly means?" For a long moment the wanderer hesitated. Here lay the truth. Having walked the path between light and dark, there remained a tendency to react, to choose not to choose at all. Was that balance or merely avoidance cloaked as neutrality? "You see yourself as neither Jedi nor Sith," the Bendu continued. "But in truth, you define yourself by them still." The Force shimmered around the immense figure, inviting yet unyielding, a deep well of possibility. The grey Jedi closed their eyes and listened, not to words but to the silence between them. In that silence, a question emerged, unspoken yet resonant. "Who are you when no side claims you?" Then the Bendu turned, its massive form dissolving once more into mist and storm, leaving only the echo of that question. Yet the wanderer was not alone. The Bendu had no need to linger as a guide. It was a mirror revealing truths that began to unravel. This first brush with the unshaped, the unclaimed, planted a seed, not of certainty but of awareness, that the middle path was not a refuge from conflict, but its deepest crucible. Here the journey was no longer about rejecting the old ways, but about understanding what lay beneath them. For the Force, after all, was not two halves warring in emptiness. It was one, ever flowing, ever shifting, waiting to be understood, not in fragments but in wholeness. The Bendu's presence lingered long after the storm mist had faded, an intangible echo, like a thought that refuses to be forgotten or a truth too vast to hold. Beneath the blackened sky of a forgotten moon, the grey Jedi sat in quiet meditation, no longer waiting for answers but listening to what remained unsaid. Balance had always been depicted as a scale, with light on one end, dark on the other, and the Jedi acting as the hand that keeps it level. But what if this metaphor was flawed? What if balance were not a static equation to solve but a state of movement, like a planet's orbit, the rhythm of breath, or the tension of a blade before it swings? This idea stirred not immediate clarity, but the promise of a new understanding. The Force did not cease flowing when neutrality was claimed. It pulsed, shifted, and demanded motion, motion that required friction, emotion, and even struggle. Denying this was the error of the Jedi. Indulging it without restraint was the path of the Sith. The Bendu offered no simple solution, only a mirror for reflection. Now the Wanderer had to seek a personal synthesis. Leaving behind the moon's quiet isolation, the Grey Jedi journeyed not to a physical place, but to a memory deeply tied to both Jedi and Sith, the ruins of Malachor. This scar on the Force, a place of frozen screams and scorched truths where ancient clashes left unhealed wounds, was not a battlefield but a graveyard of ideals. In the shattered temples, time itself felt ruptured, not haunted by ghosts but by unyielding convictions. Cautiously the Wanderer entered the ruins with cloak drawn and saber unlit, out of respect rather than fear. Darkness clung to every corner, not merely as an absence of light but as memory incarnate. In a chamber shaped like an eye, ancient inscriptions, Jedi runes and Sith sigils, were etched in a spiral, not as enemies but as counterpoints. It was clear that some forgotten hand had once tried to understand both as parts of a single whole. Kneeling before the spiral, the Wanderer meditated, not to purge thought but to follow it. Memories of youthful teachings, of anger buried and compassion reclaimed, swirled. The light was mercy, the dark was will. The Jedi taught detachment, the Sith passion. Neither was inherently wrong, only dangerous when unbalanced. Perhaps true balance was not the absence of light and dark, but the mastery of both without surrender. Then the Force responded, not with approval but with resonance. A harmony hidden beneath the constant tug of opposites vibrated through the air, a soundless music that felt both like a beginning and an end. In that moment came the vision. The Wanderer found themselves in the center of a vast, shifting desert, where dunes changed color with each heartbeat. Bright gold one moment, deep crimson the next. In the distance, two suns circled each other in an eternal dance. There were no words, only the undeniable presence of the Force, united, whole. Reaching out in that vision, a crystal formed in the Wanderer's palm, not blue, red, or purple, but one of shifting hues, a kyber unaligned. It was not empty, but full, a symbol not of conquest or tradition, but of understanding. A smile broke across the Wanderer's face. This was no longer about rebelling against the Jedi or resisting the Sith. It was about embracing the full spectrum of the Force, accepting both currents as one stream, navigated with clarity, intention, and purpose. Balance was not simply standing between light and dark, it was becoming the bridge that joined them. The Grey Jedi rose, feeling not overwhelmingly enlightened, but unmistakably more complete. Much remained to be learned, yet for the first time there was no mere reaction to light and shadow. There was active, deliberate walking of one's own path. Ahead lay other seekers and choices, not to be met as a disciple of any rigid code, but as a whole, aware being. Malachor, once a place of sorrow, now marked the close of one chapter and the opening of another. The road to true balance was never straight. It curved, split, and rejoined. But for those who dared to walk with open eyes and unguarded hearts, it was real. And it led forward. The air was still, yet thick with the weight of invisible tension. In the hush following the Bendu's revelations, the seeker, now tempered by the grey path and steeped in the Bendu's flowing wisdom, stood on the edge of something deeper. Balance was not peace. It was not stillness. It was not the absence of chaos or light. It was the ever-turning wheel between all things. And now, the Force, through the Bendu, would reveal what it truly meant to live that wheel, to endure it, to embody it. The Bendu did not speak in commands or instructions. It did not point or warn or explain, it simply was. Towering and unmoved, its golden eyes pulsed like twin stars, blinking in patient rhythm. Then, a shift, a slow turning of its massive head, A deep exhalation, as though the very winds of a forgotten world breathed from its lungs, and suddenly the force trembled. The ground beneath the wanderer's feet fell away, not physically but perceptually. The surrounding world dimmed. Sky and stone melted into mist. All noise hushed, replaced by a silence that pressed against the soul like a hand to the chest. This was the trial, not one of saber or strength, but of self. From the fog emerged two presences, felt before they were seen. The first shimmered with the golden light of the Jedi temple, words of discipline and serenity echoing like bells from distant ages. The second stalked with shadow, thick with the pull of ancient Sith wisdom, fire and fury, dominance and survival. They were not illusions. They were fragments, echoes of the paths once known. But now they reached toward the man, not to fight, but to claim. "You cannot walk between us," spoke the Jedi presence, a figure of flowing robes and calm eyes. "There is only the light or the fall." "You already fall," snarled the shadowed figure. "You taste the dark and crave it. Why deny your nature?" Both extended hands, both spoke truths and lies. His breath faltered. They had faced conflict before. Temptation, sorrow. They had chosen a path that honored both the clarity of the Jedi and the passion of the Sith. But now, both forces demanded a final reckoning. No more walking the line, choose or fall between. Then came the real trial, not in the voices of Jedi or Sith, but from within. Memories rose like phantoms, times when restraint had failed, when mercy had cost lives, when rage had saved others, when compassion bred weakness, when power corrupted, when detachment became cruelty. Every contradiction, every failure, every success relived not as stories but as wounds reopened. The Force pulsed with these truths. They hurt. And from the pain rose a third presence. It had no face, no voice. It was themselves, the part that had always lingered beneath the surface, the child who questioned, the warrior who hesitated, the seeker who stood in grey robes beneath twin suns. It spoke not in words but in silence, and the silence meant, "Do not resolve these contradictions, carry them." The test of harmony was not to achieve stillness by silencing all things, but to harmonize the dissonance. The Jedi presence began to fade. The Sith form turned to mist, neither rejected, neither defeated, merely released. The Seeker stood now in that void, no longer torn between light and dark, but containing them both, not as weapons, not as burdens, but as currents, flowing in opposition and in tandem. The fog receded. The world slowly returned. The barren plains of Atalon, cracked and wide beneath the stars, unfurled around the Bendu's unmoving form. And the Bendu, who had never spoken a word during the trial, finally turned its gaze toward the grey Jedi again. "You have tasted the storm," it rumbled, voice like wind moving through mountains. "And yet, you do not seek shelter." There was no praise, no congratulations, only recognition. Because to know harmony was not to claim mastery. It was to understand that balance is movement. The scale never stills, the winds never rest. The wanderer lowered their head, not in defeat, not in humility, but in deep, sobering awareness. This trial would never end. And perhaps that was the point. Above, the clouds stirred, the stars shimmered, and somewhere the galaxy turned, unaware of the quiet shift in the current of the Force. Somewhere war brewed, somewhere peace faltered. But here, in this quiet moment, the Force was one. The grey Jedi turned from the Bendu, not away but forward, not to reject the galaxy but to meet it anew, with a soul no longer chained by dogma or desire but tempered by fire and silence. A new understanding had taken root, not of sides, but of synthesis. And yet, questions remained. What did this harmony mean in action? What did balance look like in the face of choice? The Bendu had shown what was. Now the galaxy would test what would be. The wind on Atalon had quieted, yet the storm within the grey Jedi stirred anew. Though the test of harmony had been endured and its truth carried forward, there was no finality, only an open door to something far larger than the conflict between light and dark. Something ancient, something cosmic. As the wanderer moved across the plains, the stars above began to pulse in unfamiliar patterns. The Force whispered in rhythms beyond language, a symphony whose notes extended past the battlefields of Jedi and Sith, beyond temple doctrines, even past the Bendu's timeless voice. The galaxy was now speaking in a language of structure and chaos, of hidden fractals woven into the very fabric of the Force. They could feel it, the infinite. It began with a vision, not a sudden flash, but a gradual folding back of the veil. The world dissolved, not in violence, but in revelation. The Force, ever present and flowing, expanded in scope. It was no longer just a current between beings or a power to be wielded. It was memory, will, even architecture. Suspended not in space, but in that liminal plane the Force revealed only to those who had surrendered the need to bend it to their will. The world between worlds unfolded. White pathways stretched infinitely in every direction like constellations drawn by unseen hands. Portals pulsed with light and shadow. Some whispered with voices of Jedi masters and Sith lords, lost guardians and forgotten civilizations. Others were silent, aching with possibility. This was not a place measured in time, but one of connection. Here the grey Jedi did not walk. They listened. Approaching a portal pulsing faintly blue, the wanderer felt a profound peace. Through it flickered a memory. Two Jedi on a mountaintop watching a sunrise. No war, no fear, only understanding. Nearby, another door burned red and deep, showing a Sith alone in a ruined hall, breaking their saber in half and falling to their knees, finally free of a burden they never desired. In this space, the Force revealed not only the events of past and future, but the choices between them. A deeper truth began to form. Balance was not merely moral, light plus dark, but about relationships between time and action, self and consequence, will and surrender. Every choice echoed beyond itself, creating ripples in unseen threads. To live as a grey Jedi was to live with constant awareness of these ripples. For the first time, the wanderer saw the galaxy not as a simple line or battleground, but as a living organism, a dynamic, breathing whole where every act was both personal and cosmic. Yet with this revelation came responsibility. Standing before one door larger than the rest, its frame shifting in hues rather than script, the wanderer understood it led not to a place, but to a decision yet to be made. It was a glimpse of what might come. Stepping closer, they peered through and saw themselves older, worn but unbroken, standing on a world wrapped in flame and shadow, mediating among a fractured council of Force practitioners, light, dark, and unaligned. No one bowed or obeyed, they only listened, and in that fragile gathering the galaxy teetered on the edge of change. Not victory or unity, but dialogue. The vision faded as the world between worlds receded. It did not judge or warn, it simply showed, and that was both its gift and its danger. The wanderer knew they could not remain in possibility. Life awaited, in the galaxy of dust and flame, where every choice mattered because it was final. Closing their eyes, the grey Jedi allowed the Force to contract the cosmic map into nothingness. When their eyes opened again, they were back on Attilan. The Bendu was gone, or perhaps it had never truly been, but the winds and stars now twinkled with renewed ordinary rhythms. Yet everything felt changed. The infinite had been glimpsed, not as a goal to grasp, but as a horizon to walk toward. And now, there was work to do. The wanderer turned toward the galaxy's core, where conflict still churned, where old orders clung to broken cycles, and where voices cried out for guidance untainted by dogma. The grey path no longer offered clear answers but posed questions, and the courage to face them. It was a call to bring a new presence to a galaxy too long bound by absolutes. With the cloak drawn tight and eyes steady, the journey was far from over. For the first time, it truly felt like the beginning. The echoes of the Bendu's wisdom still resonated in his mind, a steady hum of balance that filled his thoughts like a melody he had just begun to understand. Walking the path between the Jedi and the Sith, the middle road was no longer simply a means of staying neutral. It had become a way to actively engage with the Force, to choose with intention. Yet even now, the weight of each decision loomed over him. The teachings of the Grey Jedi had once felt like a complicated balance, but with time, he saw that the true mastery of balance wasn't just in existing between light and dark, but in making conscious, mindful choices. Each decision, no matter how small, rippled through the Force. He had come to understand that walking this path was not a passive journey. It was a constant act of decision-making, and every choice held its own consequences, large or small. Standing in the serene quiet of the valley, he reflected on how each decision shaped his journey. In moments of hesitation, he had found himself caught between opposing desires, each one pulling at him in different directions. The weight of those choices was not something he could escape. It was something he had to embrace. The Force did not simply allow him to balance between light and dark. It demanded that he choose, always choose. The more he embraced this, the more he saw the force of every choice. At first he thought balance meant neutrality, standing unperturbed in the center, untouched by the chaos of the world around him. But now it became clear that true balance was not about standing still. It was about embracing the dynamic, ever-shifting currents of the Force and choosing how to navigate them. Every decision, whether driven by compassion or by fire, set the Force in motion. He had learned that balance didn't mean suppressing emotion or eradicating darkness. It meant making decisions that resonated with the Force, shaping the galaxy's fate with each action. In this crucible of choice, there was no avoiding the reality that each step carried weight. Every choice made, every action taken, would send ripples through time and space, creating new possibilities and new consequences. It was only in this heat of choice that he found his true test. Before, balance had been an abstract concept, something spoken of in classrooms and sacred texts. But now, with each moment of action, he understood that balance was not something to be achieved or maintained passively. It was something to be actively created. He was no longer acting from intellect alone. He had begun to feel the Force deep within his heart. Every choice was more than just an intellectual decision. It was a visceral experience, a pulse of energy, a shift in the very fabric of reality. The Force, in its infinite wisdom, did not punish him for making the wrong choice. It simply responded, always adapting to the decisions made. He remembered the words of a long-forgotten Jedi master. Choices are like stars. Each one creates a constellation, a new future born from the flicker of possibility. Those words, once dismissed as philosophical musing, now rang true. Every decision he made created a new future, a new thread in the web of destiny. As he stood at the crossroads of this new realization, he felt the weight of his choices not as a burden, but as a responsibility. The ripples of his actions would spread far beyond his own life. They would shape the universe itself. And in that knowledge he found strength. To choose was not to be passive or weak. To choose was to create, to direct the flow of the Force, to take an active role in shaping the balance of the galaxy. Looking ahead, he saw the vastness of the galaxy stretched out before him, teeming with possibilities and unknowns. Every choice, from the smallest moment of kindness to the greatest act of defiance, would shape the galaxy's fate. And it was not the extremes of light or dark that would guide him. It was the choices he made, mindful and intentional, that would lead him to the true balance the universe sought. The weight of decision had always been at the core of his journey. Every choice created ripples, each one adding to the larger pattern of the Force, shaping the course of his destiny and the galaxy's fate. The journey toward balance, though long and fraught with inner turmoil, had led to an understanding deeper than either the Jedi or the Sith had ever imagined. The teachings of the Grey Jedi had begun to resonate with an ancient, unseen force, the Bendu. It was not a force of domination nor one of subjugation, but a quiet strength found in the middle, where all forces coexisted without conflict. The Grey Jedi path was now no longer solely their own, but something greater, something cosmic. The quiet whispers of the Bendu had spoken softly but firmly, guiding the one who now walked between the lines of light and dark. The path was clearer now, the merging of the Bendu's wisdom with their own understanding forming a new light to follow. No longer was the Grey Jedi torn between light and dark, constantly struggling to find the balance. The wisdom imparted by the Bendu had unlocked the secret that had been elusive. True balance was not a constant act of striving, but the natural equilibrium of the Force. As the teachings of the Grey Jedi met with the ancient wisdom of the Bendu, an accord was reached, a silent but profound understanding. It was not something spoken aloud, nor something to be shouted from the mountaintops, but it was an unspoken agreement between the Force, the one who sought its balance, and the universe itself. In this silence, clarity had been born. The protagonist felt this shift most acutely during a moment of reflection, standing alone on a quiet cliff's edge overlooking the vast emptiness of space. The galaxy, once teeming with chaos and the push-pull of opposites, now seemed to rest in the peace of an ever-turning wheel, where all things, no matter how they struggled, found their place within the broader tapestry of existence. The Bendu's influence was not one that rushed in forcefully, but like the passage of time, it had simply become. It was not aggressive, nor was it passive. It existed within the gaps between thoughts, in the subtle spaces that existed just outside the reach of the conscious mind. The Grey Jedi teachings had always emphasized neutrality, a distance from both the light and the dark, yet that very distance had been a misunderstanding. True balance was not about standing in the middle, but about recognizing the flow of all things, the light, the dark, and the spaces in between. In the merging of the two philosophies, the protagonist now understood that the Force was not a force to be tamed or controlled. It was not something to be owned or dominated. It was not a weapon to be wielded with arrogance or fear. The Force simply was, and to understand it was to surrender, not to control it, but to allow it to flow through without resistance. This unification of ideas, this quiet accord, was not something that could be easily explained or shared with others. It was a state of being, a realization that washed over the individual like the gentlest of breezes, stirring the leaves but leaving no mark upon the earth. It was an internal shift, one that didn't require words or the acknowledgement of others. And yet, in its simplicity, it held the greatest strength. The teachings of the Grey Jedi had always sought to walk the fine line, to remain detached from the extremes of light and dark. The Bendu's wisdom, however, had deepened that understanding. It was not a line that needed to be walked, but a vast, expansive horizon that needed to be seen and felt. The Grey Jedi, in embracing both the light and dark, were learning to understand the delicate interplay between them, not as forces that competed for dominance, but as energies that flowed together. What had once seemed a path of constant tension now felt more like a dance, a rhythm of give and take, of rising and falling. There was no longer a need to fight the darkness or reject it, nor was there a need to cling to the light as if it were the only salvation. The path forward was one of balance, but not in the way that had been understood before. It was not about maintaining an equal weight between the two forces, but about recognizing that they were both essential, like the night and the day, the ebb and flow of the tides. The Bendu's teachings had reminded the protagonist that every action, every decision, rippled through the fabric of the Force. There was no choice that went unnoticed. The Force was vast, and its consequences stretched far and wide, Yet there was still a place within it where individual actions could create harmony, not through dominance, but through a quiet understanding of the whole. Every step taken, every choice made, affected the larger web of existence. But it was not the decision itself that mattered. It was the mindfulness with which it was made. And so, with the Bendu's wisdom now woven into their soul, the Grey Jedi found a sense of peace, a quiet understanding that would guide their path forward. They had begun to see the Force not as a power to be mastered, but as a truth to be lived. Every choice from this point on, every action, would reflect this deeper understanding. They had reached the silent accord, and with it, a new chapter began. The Force was not something that could be controlled. It was something that could only be embraced, felt in the depth of one's heart, seen in the stars above, and understood in the calm of the eternal flow. The Grey Jedi's path had not ended, it had only just begun. As the path of balance unfolds, the lessons of the Grey Jedi grow deeper, and the Force begins to reveal its greater mysteries. What was once a solitary journey of understanding, where light and dark seemed to exist as opposing forces, now feels like an interconnected dance, woven into the very fabric of existence. The teachings of the Grey Jedi, founded on finding neutrality, now blend with the ancient wisdom of the Bendu, a force that transcends light and dark, offering a broader perspective on the Force itself. The balance sought no longer seems to exist as a simple middle ground. It is not about walking a line between extremes, but about sensing the deep currents of the Force, understanding its subtle flow, and accepting its vastness. The realization that balance is not a destination but a continuous journey fills the air, calm and still, like the silent rhythm of the universe itself. The Bendu's teachings do not impose a rigid order. Instead, they guide a way of life that is in tune with the eternal cycles of creation and destruction, light and shadow. In this reflective moment, the deeper meaning of balance begins to take shape, not as a mere avoidance of extremes, but as an ever-evolving union of them. Every thought, every action, every emotion becomes part of the flow, contributing to the endless ebb and tide of the universe. The lessons imparted by the Bendu offer the understanding that harmony does not require domination over one aspect of the Force, but the coexistence of both light and dark, each flowing into the other in a delicate, timeless dance. The realization is profound. The journey to balance, once believed to be a personal endeavor, is now seen as a thread woven into the greater cosmic tapestry. The very flow of the Force connects everything, every life, every star, and every moment in time. It is a force that exists beyond individual comprehension, yet one that can be felt and understood by anyone who seeks to listen to its quiet whispers. With this understanding, a new choice arises. A choice to embrace this interconnectedness and to walk not as an isolated individual, but as part of the greater whole. No longer bound by the expectations of Jedi or Sith teachings, the decision is made to become a vessel for the Force, to allow its currents to shape the path ahead without interference, but with mindful presence. The path ahead becomes clear. It is not about rejecting the extremes of the Force, but about finding peace within them and allowing them to flow together naturally. The balance now is not one of separation, but of synthesis. The internal conflict that once defined every action is now dissolved, not through the absence of light or dark, but through their union. It is a balance that requires humility, a deep awareness that the self is but a small part of the greater Force, yet intimately connected to it. The Force, in all its complexity, is not something to be controlled, but something to be understood and allowed to shape the destiny of all things. The lessons learned through the Bendu's guidance are not about mastering one side of the Force over the other, but about aligning with the very nature of existence itself. The Bendu has shown that balance is not a simple state, but a dynamic one, a force that moves through all things, constantly shifting, constantly evolving. It is an ever-present energy flowing through every life, every moment, every thought. With these revelations, a deeper understanding unfolds. The path forward is not one of certainty, but of continued exploration. The Bendu's silent presence serves as a reminder that balance is not something static. It is the ever-changing, ever-flowing pulse of the Force, a rhythm that must be felt, not forced. The journey from here will not be easy, but it is one that promises to bring greater clarity, a path that harmonizes the lessons learned from both the Grey Jedi teachings and the ancient wisdom of the Bendu. As the path is embraced, the current of the Force flows freely, guiding each step forward. No longer constrained by the rigid frameworks of the Jedi or Sith, the way ahead feels open, full of potential and discovery. The bridge between the Self and the Force has been crossed, and now, with the teachings of the Bendu integrated, the next step on the journey becomes clear. It is not a destination, but a continuous flow, a process of becoming, ever learning, ever evolving in harmony with the Force. The bridge of understanding has been crossed, and with it, a deeper harmony has been found. The teachings of the Grey Jedi, once focused solely on the tension between light and dark, now merge seamlessly with the wisdom imparted by the Bendu. It is no longer about walking a line between extremes, but embracing a holistic view of the Force, one that recognizes the infinite complexity of existence. The balance once sought is now understood not as a simple midpoint, but as a dynamic interplay, where each moment calls for mindful awareness and thoughtful response. This new path is not one of grand gestures or forceful action, but of subtlety, an ever-present undercurrent flowing beneath the surface of the galaxy. The ancient wisdom of the Bendu, a force that sees beyond the confines of light and dark, teaches that transformation is not always immediate or obvious. It often begins with a quiet shift, a small yet profound change that ripples outward in ways unseen. The Force does not need to be bent to will. It needs to be understood, felt, and allowed to guide. In the quiet moments of reflection, the understanding deepens. This is not the end of the journey, but the beginning of something far greater. The knowledge gained is not something to be hoarded or guarded, but something to be shared with the galaxy. The path ahead is not about bringing power or domination, but about fostering growth, healing, and change through quiet, deliberate action. The teachings of the Grey Jedi, once bound by the necessity of neutrality, now take on a deeper, more expansive meaning. Balance is no longer about evading extremes. It is about embracing them, understanding their place, and finding the right time to act. The Bendu's influence has transformed the very nature of the journey. The Force, as once conceived, now seems vast, infinite, and interconnected in ways previously unimagined. The choice is not between light or dark, but the mindful understanding that both are essential to the greater whole. Where once there was division and internal conflict, now there is unity, an alignment with the natural flow of the universe. It is not about adhering to a code or doctrine, but about sensing the pulse of the Force in every living being, in every star, and in every moment. The choice is not one of power, but of wisdom, not one of dominance, but of compassion. This path does not promise certainty, nor does it offer the clear answers once sought. It is a path of learning, of evolution, and of integration. The subtle currents of the Force guide every decision, every action, but these currents are not forced, they are felt. The deeper truth now becomes clear. Every action, every choice, no matter how small, has the power to shape the galaxy. The transformation is not external. It begins from within, in the quiet moments of understanding that reverberate outward, slowly shifting the flow of events. In this new understanding, the path that lies ahead feels open, full of endless possibility. The world no longer seems divided into light and dark, Jedi and Sith. Instead, it is a complex, interconnected web of energy, where balance is not about neutrality, but harmony. The Bendu's teachings show that true mastery of the Force lies not in wielding its power, but in learning to listen to it, to sense its pulse, and to act with deep awareness and intention. With this integrated philosophy in hand, the galaxy feels both vast and intimate, an endless space of possibility where every decision reverberates through the very heart of the Force. The transformation is subtle but profound. The lessons of the Grey Jedi and the Bendu intertwine, each informing the other, leading to a new way of thinking, of living, and of acting. It is not about grand, sweeping changes, but about small, intentional actions that bring forth transformation. The path of the Grey Jedi, now enriched by the wisdom of the Bendu, is one of patience, of quiet strength, and of constant mindful choice. The galaxy is vast, filled with countless lives and countless possibilities, but it is within the quiet moments of stillness, of inner balance, that true transformation begins. And so the journey continues, not as a fight between light and dark, but as a dance between the two. The Force flows silently and deeply, guiding every step along the way. There is no final destination, only the journey itself, one of constant growth, understanding, and integration. The path that once seemed unclear is now revealed, not as a rigid line, but as an expansive, infinite horizon that stretches out before them. And with every step, every action, they move closer to the ultimate truth. The truth that balance is not a state to be reached, but a force to be embraced. The journey, once marked by turbulence and uncertainty, has now reached a point of profound understanding. It was never about reaching an end, for the true essence of balance lies in the journey itself. Each step taken along the path, from the questioning of old doctrines to the integration of the Grey Jedi's teachings with the ancient wisdom of the Bendu, has been part of an eternal dance, an ebb and flow between light and dark, between action and stillness. In the quiet moments where the external noise of the galaxy fades into silence, the true nature of the Force becomes clear. It is not something to be wielded, nor something to be feared. It is something to be felt, to be understood, not as a force to control, but as a force to be embraced. The balance is not a static concept. It is dynamic, ever-changing, flowing with the natural currents of the universe. There is no single moment of achievement, no ultimate victory. There is only the ongoing cycle, the constant push and pull, the interplay between all things. As the teachings of the Grey Jedi and the wisdom of the Bendu merge, the understanding deepens. Balance is not an absence of conflict, but the harmonious coexistence of opposites. Light and dark are not enemies. They are part of a greater whole. The Force, as it exists in the universe, is not divided. It is a singular, vast energy, flowing through every living being, every star, every whisper of the cosmos. It is the pulse of life itself. It is both the quiet whisper in the wind and the roaring storm in the sky. It is in the smallest moment of silence and in the most turbulent clash of ideas. Balance is found in both. The call to the audience is simple. Listen. Listen to the quiet currents that flow beneath the surface of existence. In a world full of noise and distraction, it is easy to lose touch with the subtle whispers of the Force. But within those whispers lies the truth, an understanding that transcends all labels, all boundaries, and all conflicts. The journey of the Grey Jedi, guided by the Bendu, is not an isolated story but a universal one. It is a reflection of the journey within each of us. To seek balance in one's life is not to avoid challenges or contradictions, but to find peace within them. It is to listen to the deep, silent rhythm of the Force and allow it to guide our choices. Every decision, no matter how small, ripples through the fabric of the galaxy. Every thought, every action, every word creates a shift. This is the responsibility of balance, not to control, but to harmonize, to bring awareness to the interconnectedness of all things. The journey has shown that the answers we seek are not always clear, nor are they found in rigid doctrines or dogmas. They are found in the space between light and dark, between certainty and doubt, between action and reflection. The Force, like life itself, is neither fully one nor the other. It simply is. And in its stillness, in its vastness, we find our true path. As the story of the Grey Jedi and the Bendu comes to a close, it leaves behind not a final resolution, but an open door, a door that leads to deeper understanding and greater connection. The path is never fully walked. It is always unfolding. And as the galaxy continues its eternal cycle of change, so too will the journey of balance continue. Now, the call is to you, the listener, the seeker. How will you walk your path? How will you listen to the quiet currents of the Force in your own life? The balance you seek is not something that can be found outside of you in the far reaches of the galaxy. It lies within, waiting to be discovered, felt, and understood. It lies in every moment, in every decision, in every breath you take. The journey is never truly over. It is a circle, a never-ending dance, and as long as you continue to seek, to listen, to understand, the Force will guide you, always, in its eternal balance.